London fog lay thick upon the city that autumn evening. At 221B Baker Street, Holmes sat idle, craving challenge. Then came the urgent knock. Sir Reginald Hargrove, the prominent banker, arrived distraught. His vault at Hargrove and Sons Bank on Threadneedle Street had been robbed overnight. The night watchman Silas Quinn was found murdered inside, stabbed to the heart. Scotland Yard saw a simple outside burglary by skilled cracksmen using tools. But Holmes saw a link. The lock showed precise internal key use without scratches. One link in a chain that would bind the killer. The game is afoot. Chapter 1. The first link. I set down these events as they occurred, dear reader, in the hope that my account may illuminate the remarkable powers of my friend Sherlock Holmes. It was a chill autumn evening in 1892 when the heavy brass knocker sounded upon the door of 221B Baker Street. Mrs. Hudson, our landlady, answered with her customary efficiency, her footsteps echoing up the 17 creaky stairs. Holmes lounged in his armchair by the coal fire, which crackled warmly against the bitter fog pressing at the windows. The air carried the sharp smell of his strong tobacco from the Persian slipper, and the faint dampness of the newspaper he had discarded. A tall man in a heavy wool overcoat entered, his boots leaving traces of cold cobblestones and Thames mud on our rug. Sir Reginald Hargrove's face was ashen, his gloved hands trembling slightly as he removed his top hat. "Mr. Holmes, I beg your assistance. My bank vault has been violated, and poor Quinn lies dead within." Holmes steepled his fingers under his chin, his eyes gleaming with that peculiar light. "Pray, take a seat by the fire, Sir Reginald. The warmth will steady you. Watson, the brandy from the Tantalus, if you please." Sir Reginald described the scene with a shaking voice. The vault at Hargrove and Sons, a solid institution near the Royal Exchange on Threadneedle Street, held gold sovereigns, bearer bonds, and confidential documents worth over £50,000. The night watchman Silas Quinn, a reliable former soldier, had been found at dawn by the day guard. The massive iron door stood ajar, the lock engaged from inside with what appeared to be a duplicate key. No signs of forced entry marred the frame, no bent hinges, no splintered wood. Scotland Yard's Inspector Lestrade dismissed it as a professional burglary, perhaps by a gang tunneling from adjacent cellars or using clever tools in the night. But Sir Reginald insisted something felt profoundly wrong. The watchman's body lay oddly positioned near the empty strong boxes, as though he had been surprised from behind. Holmes listened intently, drawing upon his pipe thoughtfully. The sweet taste of brandy lingered on my tongue as I handed Sir Reginald a glass. The room smelled of burning coal, leather bindings from Holmes' casebooks, and the faint carbolic scent clinging to our visitor's coat from the city streets. "We shall examine the scene at once," Holmes declared. We descended the 17 steps, hailing a hansom cab whose wheels clattered loudly on the wet cobblestones. The bitter fog enveloped us, carrying the pungent smell of coal smoke from countless chimneys and the muddy rot of the nearby Thames. Fog horns moaned distantly from the river, mingling with the steady toll of Big Ben striking 9 o'clock. At the bank, gaslights flickered in the entrance hall, casting long shadows across the marble floor. The air was colder here, laced with carbolic from recent cleaning and the unmistakable coppery smell of blood. We descended the stone steps to the vault, our boots scraping on rough flagstones. The door, a massive affair of steel and brass, showed no pry marks, only faint scratches around the keyhole consistent with repeated use. Silas Quinn's body remained as found, sprawled face down near the rear wall, a single stab wound to the back. Blood had pooled on the cold stone floor, its metallic odor mixing with the damp newspaper fragments scattered nearby, perhaps from the watchman's evening rounds. Holmes knelt swiftly, examining the lock with his lens. "The first link, Watson. Observe the key mechanism. Polished brass shows recent oiling from within, not forced or picked." He rose, pacing rapidly before the flickering gas jet. Such precision suggests access by someone familiar with the vault's routine. I noted the textures around us. The rough tweed of the watchman's uniform, the smooth, cold metal of the vault door, the worn leather of the emptied cash sacks lying discarded. Sounds echoed softly. Our footsteps on stone, the distant patter of rain outside, a hansom cab rumbling past on the street above. The second link forms here, Holmes continued. The watchman's keys are missing from his chain, yet his pockets contain half-smoked cigar of cheap tobacco, quite unlike the expensive pipe mixture he favored, as Sir Reginald confirms. The banker nodded gravely. Holmes' method unfolded with characteristic clarity. The link. The vault lock exhibited internal keyware without external damage. The forge only authorized personnel possessed such keys, and the fresh oiling suggested preparation by an insider rather than a hurried thief breaking in. The chain. In the red-headed league affair, a pawnbroker's assistant dug a tunnel while distracting his employer with a fabricated leak. There, the criminal overlooked that the tunnel's displaced earth carried unique clay traces from the bank's cellar, linking directly to the pawnbroker's shop. The ground remembers every step, much as this lock's polished surface reveals repeated internal access over days, not a single night's breach. The parallel is striking. Both cases hid long preparation behind everyday routine, and both depended on the criminal believing small details would go unnoticed. The bind, therefore, the theft was no outside job. It was an inside betrayal. The chain begins to form. Watson. Did you spot the internal polish as I did? What chain would you build from these observations? The third link emerged from the body itself. Quinn's wound was clean, delivered from behind with no signs of struggle, no defensive marks on his hands, only faint cold dust under his nails. He was handling something heavy recently, perhaps shifting boxes or confronting his killer, Holmes observed. He plucked the Stradivarius absently once we returned upstairs, its strings humming softly in the cold vault air, as though underscoring the puzzle. We spoke briefly with the day guard in the upstairs office, where hot tea steamed on the desk with a bitter coffee undertone from the clerk's cup. The guard, James Blackwood, spoke gruffly in a thick Whitechapel accent. I found him at dawn, sir. Door open. Vault empty. Thought it was ghosts at first. The room smelled of leather ledgers and coal smoke seeping through the cracks. Back at 221B that evening, the fire crackled invitingly against the damp fog pressing at the windows. Holmes reached for the Persian slipper, packing his pipe with deliberate movements. Looking back, Watson, the connections were there from the start. You missed the key oiling, did you not? The link was there. Did you forge it before Holmes? He reflected briefly on a past case involving a banker's nephew who forged documents. The nephew's alibi crumbled when boot prints in unique bank cellar mud matched his shoes, much as Quinn's missing keys and misplaced cigar will guide us forward. Every detail forges the chain stronger. The first link forged. The chain begins. Chapter 2. Forging Connections. The following morning broke gray and damp over London, with steady rain drumming against the windows of 221B Baker Street. I awoke to the familiar smell of strong tobacco drifting up from below. Holmes was already at work. Downstairs, the coal fire burned brightly, its warmth a welcome contrast to the bitter chill outside. Mrs. Hudson brought up breakfast, hot tea steaming in porcelain cups, toast crisp and buttered, and a pot of bitter coffee for Holmes, who rarely touched food when a case gripped him. The air held the mingled scents of damp wool from our overcoats drying by the hearth, leather bindings of his scrapbooks, and the faint carbolic trace that still clung to my own clothes from the vault the night before. Holmes stood before the mantel, steepled fingers under his chin, studying the small notebook in which he had sketched the vault lock mechanism. Today we forge connections, Watson. The first link is set. Now we test its strength by visiting those who might hold the next. He reached for the Persian slipper, packed his pipe, and drew upon it thoughtfully. We begin at the bank, then follow the threads outward. Our first destination was Hargrove and Sons itself. A hansom cab carried us through the wet streets, its wheels splashing through shallow puddles on Threadneedle Street. The cab's leather seats were cold and slightly damp. Outside, the fog horns moaned along the Thames, and Big Ben told the hour with deep, muffled resonance. At the bank, the gaslight still burned low in the entrance hall despite the daylight. The air inside was colder than the street, heavy with the smell of polished brass, old ledgers, and the lingering coppery odor of blood that no amount of carbolic could fully erase. We were shown to the chief clerk's office on the first floor. Ebenezer Thorpe rose from his desk as we entered, a thin, precise man of about 45, with wire-rimmed spectacles and neatly combed gray hair. His voice was measured, almost mechanical. "Gentlemen, I last inspected the vault at closing time yesterday. Everything appeared in order. I locked the outer door myself and returned the master key to the night safe." He extended a small iron key ring. Holmes took it, turning it slowly in the gaslight. The key showed no unusual wear, no fresh scratches, only the ordinary polish of daily use. "Your hands, Mr. Thorpe," Holmes said quietly. "May I see them?" Thorpe hesitated, then offered them palm up. The skin was smooth, uncalloused, the nails clean except for a faint dark line beneath one thumbnail. Coal dust, perhaps, or ink from ledgers. "You handle the coal scuttle in the mornings?" Holmes asked. Thorpe blinked. "Only when the boy is late, sir." Holmes nodded once and returned the key. The room smelled of leather-bound account books, and the faint sweet tobacco from Thorpe's unlit pipe resting on an ashtray. Our second call was to the lodgings of junior clerk Albert Finch in a narrow street off Clerkenwell Road. The hansom rattled over uneven cobbles. Rain dripped from the brim of my hat onto the rough tweed of my coat. Finch's rooms were on the third floor of a soot-blackened tenement. The staircase smelled of boiled cabbage and damp plaster. Finch opened the door himself, young, flushed, eyes darting. "I was here all night, gentlemen," he stammered, "playing cards with two friends from the warehouse next door." His breath carried the sour tang of last night's ale and cheap tobacco. Holmes glanced at the man's boots by the door. Cold cobblestone dust clung to the soles, but no trace of the distinctive reddish clay that marked the bank's cellar floor. "Your friends' names?" Holmes asked. Finch gave them quickly, too quickly. Holmes merely inclined his head. "We may speak with them later,"